Good evening, Parkland. My name is Zoe Streeter, and I'm the Executive Director of Parkland TV. This week on Parkland Profile, we bring to you the various fall activities offered by Grimm's Orchard, an overview of our varsity sports streaming, and more. Today is Saturday, October 10th, and this is your Parkland Profile. As we get into the Halloween spirit, Grimm's Orchard offers a wide variety of fall festivities that are always a Valley favorite. News correspondent Sean Nekic is here to give us an inside look.
Grimm's Orchard and Family Farms in Briningsville, PA is the perfect place to go with friends or family. Grimm's is most notable for their apple orchard that you can walk through and pick your own apples, but they also have a variety of different pumpkins and gourds to choose from to purchase too. Grimm's is also home to many freshly made food and drink choices, including the famous apple cider donuts and of course, apple cider. Now though Grimm's is free to walk around where you can encounter some goats and pigs, you may also buy tickets for other fun activities that include a ride on the dual cattle train, shooting apples out of their apple cannons, paintball, and the ability to walk around their corn maze, along with plenty of other fun activities. Tickets are sold at $1.10 each, and the amount of tickets for activities varies. So if you have a free day, make sure to stop by and check it out.
Thanks, Sean. As we find out more about the coronavirus, senior correspondent Alexis Dawkins brings to us some important new statistics.
6%. This, admittedly, is not a whole lot of information, is it? 6% of what? What am I talking about? Let me give you some more context. On August 29, 2020, Twitter user Mel Q made a tweet quoting a Facebook post she linked. The Facebook link is broken as the post was either deleted by its author or removed by Facebook, but the tweet quoting it reads, "This week, the CDC quietly updated the COVID number to admit that only 6% of all the 153,504 deaths recorded actually died from COVID. That's 9,201 deaths. The other 94% had 2 to 3 other serious illnesses, and the overwhelming majority were of very advanced age." That's where the quote ends, but the tweet author includes 2 screenshots, one most likely from the post which continues with, "That's a pretty big boom. This is not to say it's not real. I'm not debating that. I'm just showing updated numbers. Not here to fight. Sick of fighting. We'll delete messages wanting to fight. Peace, love, and good health to all." And the other screenshot shows the CDC page referenced in the post, which I'll show here. At this time of filming, the death count in America is estimated to be over 200,000. Now, if you didn't take this argument beyond its face value, you may not realize that this post can fall under multiple forms of propaganda and logical fallacy, such as strawman, cherry-picking, or half-truth. It takes the very basic idea of the topic, but intentionally omits extremely necessary context and background, subsequently causing readers to form an incorrect understanding of said topic, as they don't have all the information necessary to reason. To touch on one of the most important points, it should be clarified that when Mel Q states only 6% actually died from COVID, what they should be saying is only 6% died from just COVID, meaning their death certificate lists more than just COVID-19 as their cause of death. What the post author didn't include in their screenshot is the full table, listing all of the contributing factors often written on death certificates, as well as the ages they affect most. Included in this list is
influenza and pneumonia, chronic lower respiratory diseases, adult respiratory distress syndrome, respiratory failure, respiratory arrest, other diseases of the respiratory system, hypertensive diseases, ischemic heart disease, cardiac arrest, cardiac arrhythmia, heart failure, cerebrovascular diseases, other diseases of the circulatory system, sepsis, malignant neoplasms, diabetes, obesity, Alzheimer's disease, vascular and unspecified dementia, renal failure, intentional and unintentional injury, poisoning and other adverse events,
and more. To learn more about high-risk patients, the spread of COVID, and the writing of death certificates, I spoke to Dr. Amy K. Slanker, an infectious disease specialist with the Lehigh Valley Health Network.
So I'm sure you looked into it already a little bit more, but what they're saying essentially is that 6% number was people who had COVID-19 as the only diagnosis listed on their death certificate. So that certainly doesn't equate to mean that the only people, that healthy people aren't dying from COVID-19. It's just that what we know about this infection is that people who have other medical conditions that make them at a higher risk for getting the infection and then dying from the infection are more likely to have, more serious consequences when they get it.
How are patients with underlying conditions taken care of if they test positive for COVID-19 in comparison to, generally speaking, healthy people, those without any underlying conditions, of course?
So if people get COVID-19 infection, they're treated the same until they start to have symptoms that are recognized as more severe. So, for example, if someone presents to their doctor and says, I have a runny nose and a cough and a fever, and they say, it sounds like you have an upper respiratory infection, but we should absolutely do testing for COVID-19 infection. If they test positive, but they are stable otherwise, like as in their oxygen levels are fine when we look at a measurement on the pulse oximeter, and their blood pressure is stable and their heart rate is within a normal range, and they otherwise just look like they have a cold, no matter what underlying health condition that person has, they're going to be treated the same. So we treat them based on how their body is reacting to the infection and not based on what we know to be their underlying medical conditions. Because, if I said everybody who's 65 who gets COVID needs to go in the hospital, that doesn't totally make sense because some of them, are asymptomatic. Some of them have a very mild upper respiratory infection and some of them will have a very severe infection. And so how your disease progresses cannot be predicted based on what we know to be your underlying medical conditions. But if someone does come in to the hospital and they're very severely ill with COVID-19 infection, there are some options for treatment. So first, we can provide oxygen support, so that can be very helpful. There was a large study that came out of Oxford University in England that told us that dexamethasone, which is a type of steroid medication, can improve mortality. And then there were two studies that have come out recently on a new antiviral medication called remdesivir, which show that if patients are given that antiviral medication, if they have severe COVID-19 infection, that they are faster to recover. If someone has infection and they're diagnosed in an outpatient setting, like at their doctor's office, but they're otherwise stable, there's no specific treatment that's recommended at this time.
That's actually really interesting, kind of ties into my next question. If people are not experiencing these severe symptoms, say they have COVID-19 but are not experiencing these severe symptoms and don't have a history of significant illnesses, should they be concerned about how COVID-19 is going to affect them or say the possibility of fatality?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, even though I can't say for each individual person, like, you're going to definitely get a severe infection, I can say, sort of from a broad population perspective, that we can identify high-risk features that would suggest that people might have a more difficult time if they do get exposed. So, people that are have these high-risk features, like, for example, elderly patients, people who have underlying lung disease, underlying liver disease, cancer, coronary artery disease, or heart disease. These are people that are high risk for severe manifestations of COVID-19 infection. They should absolutely be cautious. They should recognize that they're at higher risk for developing severe manifestations of the infection and potentially have higher risk for death as well. And they should be taking a lot of precautions, like being really good with hand washing, avoiding crowds. The social distancing is super important, and then the mask wearing as well is important for everybody. And then, if somebody is diagnosed with COVID-19 infection in the outpatient setting, we can also recognize that some people should probably be monitored a little bit more closely. So we do have set up through Lehigh Valley a remote monitoring program. So if I have a patient that I see in the office and I recognize that they're high risk for progression based on whatever high risk feature, you can choose any one, age or whatever, I can set them up for home monitoring, where we will mail them some vital sign monitoring tools, and they can report to us every day or every other day or twice a day, whatever we decide, their vital signs, including their oxygen levels, which we can measure with the pulse oximeter. And then a nurse will check in with them occasionally and make sure they're feeling better. And then if they're not doing well, we can have early recognition of that and then tell them, you need to come in the hospital, you have to be treated.
A lot of people are saying that it's very dangerous to not take precautions to prevent the spread of COVID-19. And of course, you should be, taking as many precautions as you can. But most people are justifying this by saying that there's a chance that you can be an asymptomatic carrier. How common is it to be an asymptomatic carrier? And is the spread any different compared to someone who is symptomatic?
So right now, the best estimate of how any of these infections are asymptomatic is 40%, so very high. And as far as like how efficient the asymptomatic people are versus the people who are symptomatic at spreading the virus, it appears that they are likely just as effective at spreading the virus compared to people who have this infection and present with symptoms. So everybody has to take precautions.
So can COVID cause any sort of after effects for people infected, symptomatic or not, regardless of prior health?
So that's a great question. We're just starting to get information from patients who've had previous COVID-19 infection who have persistent lingering symptoms. Most of the reports that have come out now are in people who had more severe disease versus the mild disease, but I think that's sort of an emerging part of this infection, and more data will come to tell us a little bit more detail about that.
How much of the population would you say is immunocompromised in a significant way that could seriously threaten their life, or just at higher risk?
It's probably best if we kind of define immunocompromised and separate that from high risk from COVID. So would be someone who has a severely weakened immune system. So an example would be someone who's had a bone marrow transplant or an organ transplant, like a kidney transplant, and they're on medications that keep their immune system weakened. It could be somebody who has HIV infection, someone who has cancer, who's currently getting very strong chemotherapy. So that would be what we call immunocompromised patient. And then you want to differentiate that from someone who's high risk for COVID infection. Somebody who's older, so age over 65, someone who has, COPD or emphysema, people who have diabetes are considered at higher risk, people who have had a history of a heart attack and have what we call coronary artery disease. So you can see, just like from my examples of those different patient groups, that they're very different. And so all of those people are at risk for getting COVID-19 infection, but I wouldn't call all of them immunocompromised. The virus is called SARS-CoV-2, so whenever you refer to the virus, you want to call it SARS-CoV-2, but whenever you're referring to the infection, which is the manifestation of the virus, then you call it COVID-19 infection. So if everyone of those sort of people in our country who are going to be exposed to SARS-CoV-2, about 33%, like a third of our population, would be considered at high risk for having severe manifestations of the COVID-19 infection if they get exposed to the virus.
As you had mentioned earlier, when we were talking about, how this article from the CDC may have been misinterpreted, I kind of wanted to ask, who writes death certificates when people die, and is there kind of a broad example of how they are written that you could give me?
So the death certificate is written by a medical professional. So essentially, a doctor is going to sign a death certificate, and then how it's actually written. There's at the time of death, the provider will review the patient's medical history and determine what do you think is the main cause behind this person's death, and so that will be listed as sort of the main cause of death. But there are options to put sort of other contributing factors that will go into the death itself. And so sometimes, like a death certificate for someone who has COVID-19 may look like acute respiratory failure is the cause of death, and then COVID-19 may be put as a contributing factor. Or it might be the other way around. So COVID-19 may be the cause of death, and acute respiratory failure may be a contributing factor. So documentation it's not 100% consistent between all providers. So there's some limitation when you're looking at data that's provided by death certificates in general. And then the COVID-19 stuff, sometimes providers don't write every single comorbidity down. Sometimes they do. And so it's just, like I mentioned before, it's just a little bit inconsistent, I would say, between each provider. The data that came out was very interesting, but certainly misconstrued in the media.
Here's what I want you to take away from this video. COVID-19 is real, and right now there is nothing more important than taking the precautions to keep yourself and those around you from getting sick. Often, through social media, news and information can be misconstrued and warped in a way to suit the narrative of others, making it immensely important to do your own research on often sensationalized topics. For the sake of not just those whose own immune system can't defend them from the virus, but also you and the people you love, please wear a mask in public, frequently wash and/or sanitize your hands, remain 6 feet apart from those around you, and if you find that you're experiencing symptoms, seek proper medical assistance. I'm Alexis Dawkins with Parkland TV, hoping you stay safe and stay smart, Parkland.
Thanks, Alexis. With some of the accommodations we've had to make to be in school this year, sports is one of the aspects that's had to make major changes. With more information, Maeve Leonzi spoke with some of the girls' soccer captains and coaches about this.
It was just total excitement, total thrill for the seniors especially, because they had so much to prove and earned so many opportunities to play this season out. Keeping the safe environment was just following protocol, 6 feet apart. We wear our masks throughout the entire training session except for when we go really big. So the girls all summer long during conditioning started to recognize that they can actually perform with a mask on. So between the hand sanitizers throughout the field, they wear their masks as soon as they get here on the way they leave. I think they're just role models for all the athletes in the school on how we can make this work for everybody and keep everybody safe. That every day, could be our last day. I mean, it is such a fragile environment that we're in. So, we remind them of, make sure you leave it today on the field because tomorrow might not be here. And that it's important for them to recognize that their job is to keep us safe too. So it's not just themselves, but their family, and then pass it on to their family members. So we're all in this together, and I think we've been doing a remarkable job of keeping everybody safe.
Practice, we go out and do a team activity and we just talk to new girls, and every activity that we do on the field we end up with new people just to get to know them a little better. And also we have team buddies, and basically we just have 1 or 2 buddies and we give them candy and hype them up before every game.
Personally, I think that it changed really all of our mindsets, and it made us come to practice and work hard every time because we never knew when our season was going to end.
Thanks, Maeve. There are many opportunities to volunteer right here in the Lehigh Valley. If you're interested in getting involved, here's Amanda Cohen with how to support the organization Forgotten Felines.
Hi, my name is Dina Hankey. I've been a volunteer at Forgotten Felines for almost 15 years.
Hi, I'm Sarah Butkovich.
Hi, I'm Emma Carpinetti.
Hi, I'm Josephine Gamina.
Others should volunteer at Forgotten Felines because you get to spend time with all the cats and you also get to meet a bunch of new people.
There are cats that need help, and nobody's really there to help them.
Unfortunately, the virus has affected the number of volunteers that come to the shelter. We've implemented some different procedures for trying to protect the volunteers that do come here, and which includes wearing masks and practicing social distancing, which most of us are aware of are the best ways to try to prevent COVID being transmitted. Anybody can be a volunteer. They just need to go on the website. There's an application forms and you just need to fill it out. And our volunteer coordinator will contact the person and see what they're interested in helping with and what their availability is. And then we kind of, go from there.
A typical morning looks like everybody comes in, signs in, so we can get our volunteer hours logged, and we start cleaning.
We start with cleaning the crates and the rooms and just going around and making sure everything looks nice. And then usually we have a half hour at the end to just go around and hang out with the cats and spend time with each other.
The responsibilities of a volunteer is taking care of the waters, making sure the cats are okay in their rooms, changing their foods, changing their beds.
Most of the cats that we intake into the shelter come from our local community. The cats, when they first come in, they are put into a quarantine area and they're held for about 10 to 14 days while they're monitored to see if they have any illnesses, so that we don't put them into the general population and intermix them, because we don't want to, in essence, kind of cross-contaminate and share some diseases. Same situation as COVID. We don't really want to be passing things around. And then we do have multiple different areas for the cats, depending on their age and their health conditions.
There's 3 buildings. There's the leukemia cottage, the barn, and the house. And then there's different rooms for all the different cats.
The house, the mud room, the kitten room.
We have the feral room. That's all the stray cats. They're not, feral. That sounds very aggressive. They're just shy. We have the adoption room. That's all the cats they're good to go. They don't really need medicine or anything. We have the CD room. It's all the cats with crystals. We have the senior room. It's all the older cats. And then we have the meet and greet room. And it's just where you can meet a cat. Oh, and there's also the playpen. It's very energetic cats.
If somebody can't come to the shelter to volunteer, there are other ways that they can get involved. We always need help with social media, with our Facebook page, our website, and then even handling phone calls that come into the shelter. We receive about 50 or more a day. We also have volunteers that help set up neuter spay appointments. So there are other ways to help with the organization if you can't come to the shelter to volunteer. The shelter is always accepting donations. There is a list on our website that explains the different materials that we use, like the type of litter, the food that we like to feed our cats. And we also have an Amazon wish list. So you can go on our Amazon Smile and select Forgotten Felines, and then you can see our wish list to see other things that we might be in need of. You can always have them shipped to the shelter if you order them online. People can drop off donations as well. So we're always appreciative of whatever people can give us and the animals. The adoption process works by you can put an application in on our website that you're interested in adopting one of our animals. We have pictures on our website, on our Facebook page, also on Pet Finder. Right now, because of COVID, we are asking that people that are interested in adopting one of our cats, that they make an appointment with our adoption team to come and meet the cat and determine if it's a good fit for that family. So thank you for listening, and I'm glad that you had the opportunity to check out our shelter, and I hope it interests you in volunteering and coming to meet our cats.
Thanks, Maeve. If you've been paying attention to the announcements and our YouTube, by now you should know that we are streaming Parkland Varsity Sports. With more information is our sports director, Emily Babinchak.
Hi Parkland, I'm Emily Babinchak, your sports director for all Trojan athletics this school year. If you've already viewed our fall sports preview this month, then you already know that this year is going to be like none other, especially in the way that you view and support your Trojan athletes. I'm extremely excited to take you in the studio so that you can meet our sports media team and see all the work we're doing to stream the games right to you guys. So let's go have a look. We know that students at Parkland have been dealing with all of the changes that have been made to allow them to come to school to learn. However, we also know that there have been plenty of unknowns and uncertainties. Let us settle one for you. The Parkland Education Foundation has been hard at work to allow us in the studio to stream all of the varsity home games right to our YouTube channel for you guys to view from the safety of your own home. So yes, you will still be able to watch all of your favorite Trojan teams take down their opponents. Let's have a look and show you guys how you can do it.
Open up YouTube and find our YouTube channel, Parkland TV and Film. Hit the big red button to subscribe and click the bell icon and select all so that you get notifications every time we post. Whether we're uploading new content, Parkland profile, or live streaming varsity games, you will get notified so you won't miss out. Keep your eyes peeled and ears open for announcements about cancellations, dates, and times for all of our varsity games that we'll be streaming to you. And most importantly, rely on our YouTube channel. You can find all the important information that you'll need on our channel.
Now that you have the basis for how you are going to access all of your favorite games, let's take a look at how we in studio are getting them to you.
Parkland knows that sports are important to students, and thanks to the hard work of the Parkland Education Foundation, they have been able to provide the Parkland TV studio with all the facilities we need to get all of the games streamed right to you. So a big, huge thanks to the work they've been able to do to help us help you. Once again, don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel, Parkland TV and Film, so that you never miss another game. Thank you so much, Parkland. I'm Emily Babinchak. Stay safe and go Trojans.
Thank you for tuning into this week's episode. I'm Zoe Streeter, and this has been your Parkland Profile.